Welcome back to Saxon Math. We're going to look at lesson 94 today. It's writing fractions and decimals as percents. It's the second part of two parts. We've been doing this kind of stuff since lesson 75. We've practiced changing a fraction or a decimal to a percent by writing an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 100. So we've had that in the past. This is very similar to that. So if you guys follow along with me today, I'll work through it. We're going to go pretty quickly. There's a lot of practice problems here in this section. So as we go through it, you'll just have to pause the video or rewind it to review some of the concepts. But let me get started on it. So if we look at what we have so far, we've got to change a number to a percent, multiply the number by 100%. So whatever the number is, whatever the number is, multiply it by 100%. So with fractions, you should cancel if possible. So as you can see here, what they're doing is they're canceling. If they're taking 6/5 as a percent, they're taking 6/5 times 100%, and they put 100% over 1. 100% over 1, and here's where they're canceling. So you can see that they took this 100% divided by 5, and they got 100 divided by 5 is 20, and 5 divided by 5 is 1. So now all they're left with is this 20. Sorry. Let me go back to my screen here. All they're left with now is the 20 and this 6. So then they have to multiply 6 times 20 to get 120, and then they add the percent symbol on in the end. Okay. If you have 1 2/10 as a percent that you wanted as a percent, all you have to do again is multiply it by 100%. And if you're multiplying decimals by 100, remember you just move the decimal to the right however many places you have with zeros. So in this case, we have 2 zeros. So we move that decimal over 2 places. Here's the original position. Move it over 2 places, it's 120. And then we throw the percent symbol on there. So 1 2/10 as a percent is 120%. If a fraction will not cancel to a 1 in the denominator like it did up here, all you have to do is multiply it straight across. So like 1/3 to a percent is the same. You have 100% in the top divided by, in the denominator, 3. So 100% divided by 3 looks like this. 100% inside the box divided by 3. 3 will go into 10 3 times, and that would be 9. And then you would subtract that, and you'd get 1. You'd bring this down. You'd have 10 there. 10 divided by 3 is 3. And that 3 goes right above that 0. And that would be 9. You'd get 1. And 1 is the numerator. 3 is the denominator. And then that would be 33 1/3% is the same as 1/3. This is as a percent, this is as a fraction. They're equal to each other in terms of in those terms. So remember to change a fraction to a percent, multiply the fraction by 100%. To change a decimal number to a percent, do the same thing. Multiply by 100%. All right, let's look at some of these. So, here we go. We got this one again. So change 1/3 to a percent. So what do we have to do? Remember, 1/3 times 100%. Okay, over 1. That equals 100% in the numerator. That equals 3 in the denominator. This looks like this. 100% divided by 3. That's 3. This would be 9, because 3 times 3 is 9. Oops, we're not going to multiply that. We're going to subtract it here. And that equals 1. Bring this down. This would be 10. 10 divided by 3 is 3. That'd be 9. Subtract that 1. 1 becomes the numerator. 3 is the denominator. And we put a percent on there. 33 1/3%. 1 2/10 is a percent. We've seen this one before. 1 2/10 times 100%. That's all you have to do to change it into a percent. Now you just write 1 and 2. Start with the decimal where it was originally. I'm going to move the decimal to the right 2 places. So I go from here, 1, 2. The decimal will be over here. I need a 0 as a placeholder. Here's where it originally started. Here's 1 space, 2 spaces. Throw a percent sign on it. 1 2/10 is 120%. What about 2 1/4 as a percent? Well, if I'm going to do this, I could do it a couple of ways. I could break this down into 2 times 100% plus 1/4 times 100%, because it's 2 and 1/4. Remember, 2 and 1/4, and I'm going to multiply both of those. Or I could do it this other way. I could change this into an improper fraction, which would be 9/4 times 100%. It's up to you, really. It doesn't matter. You're going to end up with the same answer in the end. This 9/4 is equal to 2 1/4. Remember that. 2 1/4 equals 9/4. What if we do it this first way? Let's go back here. 200% is what that equals. Plus, what's this? Well, I can see that this would be over 1, and then 100 divided by 4 is actually 25. And that'd be 25%. And this would be canceled out to, let me use red here for a second. This would be 25. This would be canceled out to be 1. And you'd have 1 times 25 and 1 times 1 in the denominator. 1 times 25 in the numerators, which is 25, and 1 times 1 in the denominators, which is 1. So all you'd be left with is 200% plus 25%. So that equals, I gotta get back to this. I've got to move my Zoom stuff because I'm accidentally stopping my share. All right, so here we go. We got 25% plus the 200%. That equals this. I wanted a green, 225%. That's what it would equal. If I'm going to add 200% plus 25 is simply 225%. If I'm doing it with the improper fraction form, that's going to end up being the same thing, really. But this is, if I can cancel, I can see this 100 divided by 4 is going to be 25, and that would be 1. And now I have 9 times 25. So let me do that. 9 times 25. That equals 45. This would be 18 plus 4 makes 225, and that's percent. So you can see they end up being the same. This was just using an improper fraction. This one was breaking this percent down as 2 parts. You got 200% here plus 1/4 is a percent, which is 25%. I know that that's a decimal. As a decimal, that was 25 hundredths. So I could have actually considered that too in working through. There's lots of ways to do these math problems. So don't forget that. So I could have changed that to 2 25 hundredths and then broke that down into 200%. And this piece down, which is the 25 hundredths piece, could be broken down into this 25 hundredths, which if multiplied by 100%, actually ends up being 25%. You see that? So if I want to break those things down, I've got 200% plus what ends up being 25%. So keep that in mind. Moving along here, let's go a little quicker, I guess. I'm going to do it this way again. 200%, I know that right away because that's 2 times 100% equals 200%. and I'm going to add that to this one, which is 1/6 times 100%. I don't know what that is, so I'm going to do that right here. 1/6 times 100% over 1. I don't know what that is, honestly. So that's going to be this in the numerator and this in the denominator. If I multiply it straight across, now I've just got this problem now, 100% divided by 6. 6 will go into 10 one time. Subtract it, I get 40. When I bring that 0 down, 6 will go on to 40 6 times, and that'll be 36. Subtract that, that'd be 4. And there, I could keep going, I could add zeros, or I can make this an improper or mixed number. I've got 4 as the numerator, 6 as the denominator, and that's percent. And that would be reduced to 16. And both of these are divisible by, what are they both divisible by? They're both divisible by 2. So if I divide them both by 2, I end up with, in this case, 2/3, right? 4 divided by 2 is 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. And then the percent symbol is what's going to be that piece. So that's just the 1/6 piece. So I've got 16 and 2/3% is what the 1/6 piece is. And then I add those together and I end up with my final answer. It should be 216 and 2/3%. Because 200% plus 16 and 2/3%. All right, moving right along. If you have 20 of the 30 students on the bus were girls, 20 of the 30 students, 20 of the 30, so that looks like this fraction. 20 of the 30 students on the bus were girls. What percent of the students were on the bus were girls? So it's just asking me to change that into a percent. And actually, before I even get going, I noticed something here. I see that this 20 and this 30, they both can be reduced. I can make this a little simpler work. 2/3 times 100%. Okay. And if I do that, it's basically the same as 20 over 30 times 100%. But why work with bigger numbers when I can see I can divide both of these by 10 and end up with 2/3. If they were compatible numbers, if they are numbers that were manageable with 100%, then I might not do that. Like if this was 20 here as opposed to 30, then I would see, oh, well, 20 will go into 100, and I can break that 100 and that 20 down, but it's not. So if they're compatible numbers, that would be the only reason why you might not want to reduce those things. I did reduce it to 2/3. 20 over 30 is the same fraction as 2 over 3. But now I just need to work through this. So now I can see that this can't be reduced. I can't cancel anything out. So I just multiply straight across. Numerator times the numerator equals 200%. Over the denominator, 3. So that means I've got 200%. That looks like that. It's inside the box, it's on the top, divided by 3, it's on the bottom. And then that 3 will go into 20. It'll go in there 6 times. That'll be 18. That'll be 20. Bring this down. This would be 20 again. That'll be 6 times. That'll be 18. Subtract that. 2 is left over. I'm done with my numbers. I'm going to use this as my numerator. This is my denominator. And then I throw a percent sign on there. So 20 of the 30 students on the bus were girls. What percent of the students on the bus were girls? 66 and 2/3% were girls. All right, let's try some of these. We're going to change 5/10 to, it's a decimal number. We're going to change it to a percent by multiplying by 100%. So answer that now. What is 5/10 as a percent? Here it is. I need to put 5, and then I need to move the decimal from this position 2 places to the right. So that means this as a decimal, from a decimal to a percent would be 50%. Letter B, what about 6 hundredths as a percent? Again, I start with 6. I notice that it's actually 2 spaces, so I go 1, 2. This is where the decimal is going to be. This is my percent symbol. That's the answer, 6%. Letter C, what about this one? 125 thousandths as a percent. Now remember, I'm multiplying it by 100%. And in order to multiply by 100, don't forget this, multiplying by 100, you're literally just moving the decimal to the right 2 places. That's all you need to do. And then you need to remember you've got a percent sign on there, so you're going to throw a percent on the answer. But all I need to do is rewrite these digits, 1, 2, 5. And I need to move that decimal 2 places to the right. And that decimal, let me rewrite that, 5, so that I've got space for my decimal. My decimal should be right here. 1, 2 places over, and then I put a percent sign on there. Okay? What about letter D, 45 hundredths as a percent? 45 hundredths. So again, I start with the digits, the 4 and the 5, and I'm going to move those decimals. The decimal from this position is where it starts originally, and I move it 2 places to the right. I don't need to put it there because I just don't. I'm just going to put my label on there, 45%. What about this one? 1 3/10 as a percent. Again, I'm going to write the digits. This is the original position of the decimal. Move it over once, move it over twice. I need a 0 as a placeholder, and I throw my percent symbol on there. Letter F, 25 thousandths. What's that equal as a decimal? I write my numbers, the 2 and the 5, and I move the decimal front 2 places over. That means it's going to go right between the 2 and the 5. So that'd be 2 5/10%. That's what that one will be. This one, move the decimal 2 places to the right. 9 hundredths is 9%. Move the decimal 2 places to the right. 1 25 hundredths is the same as 125%. What is 625 thousandths? That'd be 62 5/10%. Getting the hang of this? All right, let's move on. All right, if we're going to change each fraction or mixed number to a percent by multiplying by 100, all we need to do in this one is just that, multiply by 100. So it's 100%, and we're going to put it over 1. So what's 2/3 as a percent? Well, it would be 200% divided by 3. Let me work that out down here. 200% divided by 3. So in this case, I have 3 will go into 20 6 times, and then I get 18. Subtract that, I get 20, because I have to bring down the next 0. This would be 6 again. I'd get to 18, and I'd have 2 left over. 2 is the numerator, 3 is the denominator. 2 is the numerator, 3 is the denominator. So that means this 2/3 would be the same as 66 2/3%. What about 1/6? Well, 1/6 is the same as if we're going to multiply it by 100%. That looks like this. You'd end up with 100% divided by 6. So that's what you got to do. 100% divided by 6. And that would be the same as 1. We'll go in there 6 times. That'll be 4. Bring this down. This will be 0. 40 will be 40 divided by 6. Closest thing would be 6. We get 36. And then we'd have 4. That'd be 4 as the numerator, 6 as the denominator percent. I need to reduce that because that's 4/6. I'm going to reduce it to 2/3, but this is now 16 2/3% would be what 1/6 equals as a percent. What about 1/8? Well, 1/8, again, we just multiply it by 100% over 1. And that's the same as 100% in the numerator divided by 8 in the denominator. So that looks like this. 100% divided by 8. 8 will go into 10 one time. Subtract that. That'd be 20. Oops. Let me redo that. 20. And then this would be 20 divided by 8 would be 2. And you get 16. Subtract that, you get 4. 4 is the numerator, 8 is the denominator. What's that equal? That's 1/2, right? You reduce that. So this makes 12 1/2%. Okay, let's do letter M. Let me pick green for this one, my favorite color. All right, in this case, I actually want to do it. I'm going to break it down like this again. I know that that's 100% because 1 or 2 or 3 is just times 100. So I'm just going to remember I've got to add 100% to this. And I'm going to break it down by that fraction. I'm going to just do this fraction piece separately. Okay, so 1/4 times 100% over 1. I know that this will cancel, so let me do that. I've got, this would cancel this because this will be 25 and that would be 1. 25 is the numerator then, so I'd end up with 25 divided by, well, that's just 25%. 25 divided by 1, you see. So now I just have that 100% plus that 25%. That equals 125%. That's all I had to do there, actually. 1 1/4 equals 125%. I'm going to do the same with this, with letter N here, 2 4/5. Let me break it down over here for you guys. 2 4/5. That's the same as 2 times 100% plus this 4/5 times 100%. Okay, so if I broke it down, it's this piece is here and this fraction piece is here. So the whole number and then the fraction part is here. If we remember to add these two pieces together, you end up with the answer to what 2 4/5 is as a decimal. So this would be 200% plus, I can see that this 5 actually cancels out. This 100 divided by 5 is 20. So now I know that I can have 4 times 20 as the numerator, that's 80%. And 1 is the denominator. So I don't, 80 divided by 1 is 80. So when I complete this, now I've got the answer here. This would be 280%. And 1 1/3 is the same as that. I'm going to do 1 1/3 down here. 1 1/3. That's the same as taking 1 times 100% plus 1/3 times 100%. Okay, so now I just need to break this down. This is 100% plus, what's this going to be? Well, this is going to be over 1. 100% divided by 3, 100% divided by 3. I haven't done that yet. So what's 100% divided by 3? That equals this. 3 will go in there 3 times. This will be 9. Subtract that. That'd be that. This will go to 3. This will be 9. Subtract that. 1 is the numerator. 3 is the denominator. And then it's percent. So that's 33 1/3%. Once you do these enough, you'll start to know some of these by heart. You'll just remember them. So that makes 100 plus 33 1/3%. That's pretty easy. 133 1/3%. That's what that would be. Okay. So just to recap, 2/3 is the same as 66 2/3%. 1/6 would be 16 2/3%. 1/8 would be 12.5%. 1 1/4 is 125%. 2 4/5 is 280%. And 1 1/3 is 133 1/3%. All right, a couple more here. And then you've got your quiz. What percent of this rectangle is shaded? Here's what you've got to do with this. You got to look at each one of these things. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's actually 6 parts to this. There's 6 parts to that rectangle. So it says what percent of this rectangle is shaded? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5 out of 6. That's the fraction that's shaded. How do you change that to a percent? You just have to take 5/6 times what? 100%. And that's over 1. I see both of these are divisible by 2. I could do something with that if I wanted to. This would change to 50 and this would change to 3. I don't really necessarily have to do that though, because I see that I'm going to probably end up having more compatible numbers working with 500% divided by 6 anyway, because that's what this will end up being, 500%, and this will be 6. So if I do 500% divided by 6, this might work out just fine anyway. 6 times what? 7 will get me to 42. 6 times 8 will get me to 48. So I'm going to use 8. That's close enough. This subtracted would be 20, because I'm going to bring the 0 down. 20 divided by 6 would be 3. And then I'll have 2 left over. So 2 goes in the numerator and 6 in the denominator. But that's the same as 1/3. I was going to reduce that. So this would, the answer to that would then be, for letter P, is going to be 83 1/3% is shaded for this one. Letter Q, what percent of a yard is a foot? So in this one, you just have, you know what a yard is, you know what a foot, hopefully. If you don't, you know that there's 3 feet in a yard, right? So what percent of a yard is 1 foot? So 1 foot is 1/3. That's the equivalent fraction of 1/3 of a yard. So that means what percent is that? You guys might actually remember that from previous work that we've done today, but if you don't, you just take 1/3 times 100%. Remember, you're just multiplying times 100%. And I got 100% in the numerator, and I have 3 in the denominator. So when I do that, it's just this, 100% divided by 3. And that's the same as 3 times 3, which is 9. Subtract that, I get that. Bring this down, this would be that. 10 divided by 3 is 3. And I multiply that, I get 9, and I subtract it, I get 1. 1 is the numerator, 3 is the denominator. This 1 is the numerator, this 3 is the denominator. And I throw a percent symbol on there, and I'm done. So what percent of a yard is a foot? It would be 33 1/3%. Okay, any questions on any of those? All right, in your practice today on your quiz, you need to answer change 2/5 to a percent. Remember, you just multiply it by 100%. Change 1/7 to the percent, same thing. Change 3/8 to a percent, same thing. Change 92 hundredths to a percent. This one's the easy one, all right? If you know the decimals, it should be easy, all right, guys? Go back and look. Look at how easy that was. Number 5, change 406 thousandths to a percent. Again, another easy one, right? These last two should just, they're pretty much mental math. If you know how to move decimals to the right, you got that, all right? So excellent work today. Hope you guys have a great morning, afternoon, evening, good night. We'll see you guys tomorrow.